Hello and welcome to another new episode of the Fin to the Woods podcast. Welcome back if you've listened to the podcast before, and hello, if this is your first time listening. And on this episode, I'm going to be talking about a topic that some people might find slightly controversial, I guess, and that is stunt casting. Oh, the joys of stunt casting. Whether it works, whether it's worth it, what's the point? Is it a hindrance? And yeah, everything in between. So if you don't know what stunt casting is, it's basically when they get a famous name, a celebrity, and put them into a show to help sell tickets. That's kind of the basic understanding of what stunt casting is, but there's different levels of stunt casting, there's different types of stunt casting, and this has taken quite a few years for me to work out what the different categories are, but there kind of is different categories. It's an often talked about topic across all genres of theatre. It happens all over the place, and I'm sure already you can probably think of examples of shows you've seen where there's been some stunt casting involved. Or was it star casting? We'll get onto that in a bit. I think the best example to start this episode off with is Chicago, the musical Chicago, originally choreographed by Bob Fosse and starred Gwen Verdon and Chita Rivera. It had a revival in the mid-90s on Broadway, which has since run for years and years and years and was in the West End and has toured the UK and the US and the world extensively, and it's notorious for stunt casting. And over the years it's had the most bizarre people in the show, some good, some bad, some very, very bad, but overall it's kind of been a bit of a hit. Due to its recycling of stars from yesteryear, it's kind of created a bit of a cult around it. And they get some great people in, like recently Pamela Anderson starred in the Broadway production of Chicago as Roxy Hart, and apparently was amazing. There is clips on YouTube, and I've seen a few like audio recordings and things like that, and she was pretty good, to be fair. Like, for Pamela Anderson, who's never really done any Broadway musicals before, she did a pretty good job. Another one is the singer Brandy. She played the role of Roxy Hart on Broadway a few years ago, and she was phenomenal. But then again, she's a brilliant actress and a brilliant singer. She's obviously very well known for playing Cinderella in the TV film alongside Whitney Houston and Whoopi Goldberg, so she has that performing experience, so I'm not particularly surprised that she was good. So in that sense, it was nice because you got to see a star who'd never really done any Broadway musicals do a Broadway musical and do it really, really well. They've had some interesting stars perform over the years as well, who might have not fared as well as Brandy and Pamela Anderson, such as Jerry Springer and country singer Billy Ray Cyrus as Billy Flynn, as well as Sofia Vergara, most well known for her appearance in Modern Family as Mama Morton. Another interesting Mama Morton was Wendy Williams. Yes, the US chat show host played the role for a little bit on Broadway, and she can't really sing, so that was interesting. You also had Mel B from the Spice Girls play Roxy, and at one performance she broke into Wannabe by the Spice Girls in the middle of the show. Why would you do that? They've had a few Real Housewives over the years, including Lisa Rinna before she had joined the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, and yeah, they've chosen some interesting people over the years, let's just say that. So has it worked for Chicago on Broadway, all this stunt casting? Yes, is the answer. It's still running to this day. And yes, it may not be selling to full capacity, and yes, it might not be making the most money, but it's quite a cheap show to run. It's got a fairly small orchestra, it's got a fairly small cast, there's minimal set, minimal costumes, and it's been the same for like 20 odd years now. So they know what works and what doesn't, and obviously stunt casting works for them. When the show was on in the West End, we were just as bad. We had lots of famous people like Michelle Williams from Destiny's Child appearing in the show, but usually we picked people who could perform. We had Martin Kemp, Cuba Gooding Jr., the wonderful Caroline Flack, all people who have sung in the past and kind of had performing experience. We don't necessarily always go for random reality TV stars. Chicago also provides a prime example of star casting. When you cast someone who is well known in the business to perform a role and sell tickets, such as Bonnie Langford and Ruthie Henschel, both of whom have appeared both on Broadway and in the West End in Chicago. And they've got a big following behind them. They've done other things away from the world of musical theatre. So they do bring in an audience and people do buy tickets to go and see them. But I wouldn't say that is stunt casting. I'd more say that is star casting because they're musical theatre stars at heart. Brooke Shields very famously took over from Donna Murphy in the Broadway revival of Wonderful Town in about 2003, 2004, and her performance was so well received that they made another cast recording with her. They recorded Brooke Shields singing the songs from the show. They'd already released a cast recording with Donna Murphy. That's how successful Brooke Shields' stunt casting turn was. Another example of a new cast recording being recorded with a new star was when Vanessa Williams took over from Chita Rivera in the Broadway production of Kiss of the Spider-Woman. So Vanessa Williams had won Miss America and she'd become quite a famous pop singer, but hadn't done anything on Broadway, wasn't famous for her Broadway work. And she took over in Kiss of the Spider-Woman and everyone loved her. And they recorded another new cast recording, even though they'd done one with Chita Rivera. And that was stunt casting at the time, because Vanessa Williams wasn't a musical theatre performer, but now we know her quite well, really, as a theatrical performer and one who has a Tony nomination under her belt for Into the Woods. I think the UK's become worse when it comes to stunt casting. Over the last 5-10 years, it's got a lot worse. The prime example being when Waitress was on in the West End, they got Joe Sugg, the YouTuber, to be in it just to sell tickets, and they got Ashley Roberts from the Pussycat Dolls to play Dawn for a few weeks in the summer just to sell tickets. And at the time it really annoyed me because that's a show that would have probably sold off its own back, but they felt the need to stunt cast. I mean, just the other day, they announced 2 new cast members for the West End transfer of the Leicester Curve production of The Wizard of Oz. A very well-known title, one that will sell off its own back. It doesn't need stunt casting in it. It really doesn't. It just doesn't. And the 2 people they announced were Jason Manford and Ashley Banjo. Now, I understand Jason Manford. He's done a lot of musical theatre over the past 10 years or so. He was in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. He also starred in the UK tour of Curtains, which ended up going to the West End. And he's good on stage and he's got a good voice. However, Ashley Banjo, known for creating and running and being the frontman of Diversity, the dance troupe, is playing the Tin Man. Now, I mean, he could be a wonderful singer and we just don't know it. And we all know he can dance, but can he act? And it just kind of frustrates me when a show with a title that well known and that kind of lovable, and people love The Wizard of Oz. People have loved it for decades, and it's a firm favourite among so many families up and down the country and across the world. Why do you need to put Ashley Banjo in that part? Why don't you give that part to someone who has auditioned for it and who has gone to drama school and trained, and this could have been their big break and a big West End musical at the London Palladium? No, you just put Ashley Banjo in from Diversity. It kind of frustrates me and pisses me off a bit. It just riles me up. I think that is my main issue with stunt casting. Now I'm at drama school. Yes, I'm not doing performing, but I'm still around that drama school environment 24/7. You see how hard people train and the hours they have to put in and the work that goes into becoming a West End standard performer. It's intense, it's insane, it's blood, sweat and tears, to be honest. And then these celebrities just walk into these roles that they could have had, that they've trained 3/4/5 years to get there, to be at that point in their career where they can audition for those things and they can go into the West End and do big things and go on tours, and that opportunity gets snatched away from them. And I think that's what annoys me the most, is the hard work that goes into the training and the time and the pressure can then all be taken away when someone from Emmerdale gets the part instead. One very good example of stunt casting gone wrong / gone right is when Martine McCutcheon starred as Eliza Doolittle in the National Theatre revival of My Fair Lady in the early noughties. Now, this casting at the time, Martine McCutcheon was one of the biggest people in the world of television. She just starred as Tiffany in EastEnders, and she was huge. She was everywhere. So they put her into the show, and it sold like hotcakes. It sold out, and it transferred to the Theatre Royal Drury Lane. It was a good production, and it did very well. However, she missed a lot of performances because she was ill. She had ME, but at the time, this wasn't known, so the press kind of vilified her and made her seem like an awful person. And there's lots of stories about what went on, and no one really knows. It's all kind of rumours about the fact she went out partying, this, that and the other. But like I said, she was ill at the time, and this is fact. But the press basically made the public not like her, which wasn't very nice at all. However, she went on to win the Olivier, despite all this bad press and everything. She went on to win the Olivier Award for Best Actress in a Musical. And Jonathan Pryce, who was playing Professor Henry Higgins, in the video of when she wins the Olivier, his face is just like disdain, pure disdain at her winning. And he was so cross at her, or whatever he was feeling at that time. And that didn't help either, because it further pushed the idea that she'd been difficult and stuff. I think this is where another issue stems in the world of stunt casting, is the press interest in the show. Yes, it's good for ticket sales, and yes, it's good that it's all over the telly, all over the newspapers, because at the end of the day, as they say in the Candor and Ebb musical curtains, it's a business, which is very, very true. It causes problems because of the dramas that then get released into the press, and the people being difficult and this, that and the other. And you wouldn't get that. You wouldn't get that in a show without people who are famous in it, because the press don't care. The press don't care if someone's being difficult backstage at The Lion King or anything like that. But they care when it's a big celebrity in it, and they'll make problems up, and they'll push things here, there and everywhere. And that's just not good, really, for anyone, for the people involved in the show, for the production team, and for the person who it's affecting. I just think I really, really disagree with that totally. I have less of an issue with stunt casting when the person who has been cast is capable of performing the role. Like, that's absolutely fine, in my opinion, because if they can sing and act and dance the socks off that part, then they've deserved it, because, to be honest, they can do it. And that's what you want at the end of the day. You want to go and see a show where whoever's performing in one of the lead roles can do it. Like Faye from Steps in Singing in the Rain, the recent tour. This is such a random example, but she played Lena Lamont, and oh my god, she was hilarious. And obviously she can sing and she can dance, because she's done Strictly, but she could act that part so well. It's funny, and if it's not done well, that part can be really awkward, because then you're like, oh god, she's not funny. But she was hilarious, and she probably was one of the best people in that production. And so I like it when the person who has been cast is capable of doing the role. I think that's great. It's when it's a person who's been cast because they're a name, and they can maybe vaguely sing in tune, they have some sort of rhythm, but they just don't have the ability, they don't have the talent to be able to pull it off. I think COVID's had a bit of an effect on this, because they need to bring back audiences, and over the last kind of year or two there has been quite a lot of stunt casting all around the country, in tours and in West End shows and everything, but it's gradually calming down a bit now, especially as audiences last year were up on pre-COVID levels, which is fantastic. But hopefully it gradually peaches off, and more people just come to the theatre to see the shows, instead of seeing someone from the Pussycat Dolls, instead of seeing someone from Destiny's Child, instead of seeing someone from a soap opera, instead of seeing someone who came 15th on X Factor in 2007. Yes, producers need to make money. Yes, shows need to make money to run and be able to pay the cast, the crew, the band, everyone. However, there is better ways of doing that than casting bad people. I hope you've enjoyed this little rant about stunt casting and kind of looking at the pros and the cons of it. And yeah, let me know what you think of it all. I'm interested to know what people's opinions are on stunt casting as a whole. But yes, thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed. And obviously look at my website, fintothewoods.com, and my TikTok, fintothewoods, and just search fintothewoods on Google and stuff comes up. So yes, thank you for listening, and I will see you next time.